You keep trying to fix a man who already showed you exactly who he is. And that right there is where everything starts going wrong. Because when a man shows you his habits, his mindset, his level of effort, his emotional availability, that's not a rough draft of who he might become someday. That's who he is right now. And too many women look at a man and say, I see his potential, instead of asking, is this man already living up to the standard I need? You're not dating potential, you're living with reality. See, the mistake isn't that you care. The mistake isn't that you want to help. The mistake is believing that your love is going to transform someone who hasn't decided to transform himself. That's a heavy burden to carry, because now you're not just in a relationship, you're in a project. You're investing time, energy, emotions, trying to shape him into the man you need while he's comfortable being exactly who he's been showing you all along. And what happens over time is you start making excuses for him. You say things like he's just going through a phase, or he had a tough past, or he's scared to open up. And while some of those things might be true, they don't change the fact that he is still choosing how he shows up for you. A man who wants to grow will grow. A man who wants to step up will step up. But a man who is comfortable will stay comfortable, no matter how much you pour into him. You start adjusting yourself to fit his lack of effort. You lower your expectations just a little bit at first. You tell yourself you're being patient, understanding, supportive, but what you're really doing is slowly teaching him that he doesn't have to meet you at your level, because you're willing to come down to his. And once that pattern is set, it becomes the standard of the relationship. Now, here's the part that hurts the most. The more you try to fix him, the more you lose yourself. Because now your focus isn't on your happiness, your growth, your peace of mind. Your focus is on whether he's changing, whether he's improving, whether today is finally the day he becomes the man you've been hoping for. And while you're busy watching him, you're neglecting you. A good man doesn't need to be fixed. A good man might need understanding. He might need support. He might even need time to grow. But he is already showing effort, consistency, and respect from the beginning. You don't have to beg him to communicate. You don't have to convince him to treat you right. You don't have to decode mixed signals and call it depth. When a man is right for you, his actions remove confusion. They don't create it. But when you are caught up in trying to fix someone, you start confusing struggle with love. You think the harder it is, the more meaningful it must be. You think the emotional roller coaster means there's something real there worth fighting for. But a healthy relationship doesn't feel like constant work just to be seen, heard, and valued. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your standards just to keep things going. And let's be honest about something. A man knows when he's not giving you what you deserve, he's not confused about it. He's aware of the effort he's putting in. So when he sees that you're still staying, still giving, still hoping, he starts to believe that what he's doing is enough for you, not because it actually is, but because you're accepting it. That's why trying to fix a man often backfires. Instead of inspiring him to rise, it allows him to remain exactly where he is. Because there's no real consequence for not changing. You're still there. You're still loving him. You're still investing. So in his mind, there's no urgency to become better. And over time, resentment starts building inside you. You feel unappreciated, overlooked, emotionally drained. You start asking yourself why he can't just see your worth, why he can't just meet you halfway, why he can't just meet you halfway, why he can't just be the man you know he could be. But the real question is, why are you holding on to who he could be instead of accepting who he is right now. Because the truth is, potential is not a promise, it's a possibility. And not every man chooses to live up to his potential. Some men stay exactly where they are because it's easier, because it's comfortable, because they've never been required to do more. And if you keep accepting less, you become part of the reason he never has to grow. The moment you stop trying to fix someone is the moment you start seeing clearly. You stop romanticizing what could be and start evaluating what actually is. You start asking yourself if this man, as he is today, with his current habits, his current mindset, his current level of effort, is someone you can genuinely build a life with. And if the answer is no, then no amount of fixing, guiding, or loving harder is going to change that reality. Because real change doesn't come from pressure, it comes from personal decision. A man has to want to evolve on his own. He has to recognize the need for growth without being pushed into it. When you choose a man based on who he is, instead of who you hope he'll become, you save yourself from unnecessary heartbreak. You protect your energy. You maintain your standards. And most importantly, you create space for someone who already aligns with the life you want to build. And that shift, that decision to stop fixing and start choosing wisely changes everything about the kind of relationship you allow into your life. You give relationship level benefits before commitment, and without realizing it, you teach a man that he doesn't have to step up to keep you. That's where the imbalance begins. Not because you're doing something wrong out of bad intention, but because you lead him with your heart while he's still deciding with his options. You're already acting like a partner while he's still operating like someone who hasn't made a clear choice. See, men understand value differently. It's not just about what you give. It's about what is required to receive it. When something meaningful comes with no expectation, no boundary, no structure, it stops feeling like something that needs to be earned. It becomes something that's just there. And once something becomes just there, it gets taken for granted. You start investing deeply, emotionally, and physically, showing loyalty, consistency, care, support, all the things that belong inside a committed relationship. You're checking on him, standing by him, prioritizing him, giving him access to your time, your energy, your body, your peace. And in your mind, you believe this will make him realize your worth. You believe that if you show him how good you are, he'll naturally want to lock you down. But what often happens is the opposite. Because instead of inspiring commitment, it removes the need for it. He's already experiencing the benefits of having you without making the decision to truly choose you. There's no pressure, no urgency, no reason for him to define the relationship when everything he wants is already being given freely. And now you're sitting there wondering why he's not stepping up, why he's not making things official, why he's not giving you clarity. Meanwhile, from his perspective, everything is already working just fine. He's getting your attention, your affection, your presence, your energy, without having to elevate his role in your life. This is where a lot of women get frustrated because they feel like they have done everything right. They've been kind, supportive, loving, patient. They've shown consistency. They've proven they wifey material. But here's a hard truth. Being ready for a relationship doesn't mean he's ready to be in one with you, especially if he's never been required to show up as a partner. A man values what he invests in, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, and through effort. When he has to pursue, when he has to prove, when he has to step outside his comfort zone to earn your place in his life, that's when attachment builds. That's when respect grows. That's when respect grows. That's when he starts to see you as someone he doesn't want to lose. But if you skip that process and give him everything up front, you rob him of the journey that creates that connection. You remove the challenge. You remove the standard. And without realizing it, you position yourself as someone who is easy to access but hard to commit to. And let's be clear, this is not about playing games or manipulating someone. This is about understanding value and boundaries. There's a difference between being genuine and being available at all costs. There's a difference between being loving and being overgiving. Because when you overgive in the beginning, you set a tone that becomes very difficult to change later. Now you're trying to pull back. You're trying to create distance, set boundaries, ask for more. But from his perspective, this feels like a shift, like something has changed. And instead of him rising to meet your new expectations, he may start pulling away because the version of you he got used to was one that gave without requiring. So now you feel stuck. You've already invested so much. You've already given so much of yourself. And walking away feels like losing everything you put in. But staying in that dynamic slowly drains you because you're giving at a level that's not being matched. A healthy relationship is built on progression. It's built on stages where both people gradually invest more as the connection. Deepens. It's not about withholding who you are. It's about pacing how much access someone gets to you based on how they show up. When a man shows consistency, effort, and intention, then you open up more. When he proves he values you, then you invest deeper. But when you give everything in the beginning, there's no room left to grow into something more. You've already given him the full experience without the foundation. And without that foundation, the relationship has nothing solid to stand on. You have to understand that commitment is not just about how much a man likes you. It's about how much he's willing to line his actions, his time, and his life around you. And that kind of alignment doesn't happen when there's no expectation for it. A man who truly wants you will not be confused about stepping up. He won't hesitate to define the relationship. He won't keep you in a space where you're giving everything while he gives just enough to keep you around. But if you allow that dynamic to continue, you teach him that this is acceptable, that this is enough, that he doesn't need to do more. And over time, that imbalance creates emotional exhaustion. You start feeling unfulfilled, undervalued, and taken for granted. You begin questioning your worth, wondering if you're asking for too much, when in reality, you're asking the wrong person to meet the right standards. The key is not to stop being loving, not to stop being giving, not to stop being who you are. The key is to give in alignment with what you're receiving, to match energy with energy, to allow a man to earn deeper access to you through his consistency, his effort, and his actions. Because when a man has to work for something meaningful, he respects it differently. He protects it differently. He values it differently. And most importantly, he commits to it differently. You ignore consistency and fall delve potential words and moments instead of patterns and actions. And that's where the confusion begins. Because words can sound perfect, moments can feel magical, and potential can look incredibly promising. But none of those things are stable foundations to build a relationship on. They feel good in the moment, they give you hope, they create excitement, but they don't tell you who someone truly is over time. A man can say all the right things. He can tell you how much he likes you, how different you are, how he's never felt this way before. He can paint a picture of a future that sounds exactly like what you've been wanting. And in those moments, it's easy to get emotionally attached because you're connecting not just to who he is, but to the vision he's creating in your mind. Then there are those moments where everything feels right. The late night conversations, the deep talks, the laughter, the chemistry, the way he looks at you when you're together. Those moments can be powerful. They can make you feel seen, valued, special. And you start holding on to those moments as proof that something real is there, even if those moments are inconsistent. And then there's potential. That idea of who he could become if he just got more focused, more mature, more serious. You see glimpses of it, small flashes of the man you believe he can be, and those glimpses keep you invested because you're not just seeing him as he is, you're seeing him as a work in progress that you believe will eventually align with what you need. But here's the problem. Words, moments, and potential are not patterns. And patterns are what define reality. Patterns are what show you who someone is when the emotions settle, when the excitement fades, when life becomes normal. Patterns are built through consistent behavior, repeated over time, without you having to ask, chase, or remind. In a man is inconsistent. That inconsistency is not confusion, it's clarity. It's showing you that his effort is conditional. It's showing you that he can show up when it's convenient, when it feels good, when it suits him, but not necessarily when it's required to build something stable. And instead of seeing that inconsistency as a red flag, you start trying to decode it. You tell yourself, maybe he's busy, maybe he's stressed, maybe he's just not good at expressing himself. You start filling in the gaps for him, justifying why his actions don't match his words. And in doing that, you slowly detach from reality and attach yourself to the version of him that exists in your expectations. That's how emotional confusion grows, because now you're dealing with two different experiences at the same time. The experience of what he says and how he makes you feel in certain moments, and the experience of how he actually shows up on a regular basis. And when those two things don't match, you start questioning yourself instead of questioning the situation. A man who is serious about you doesn't create that kind of confusion. His words align with his actions. His effort is consistent. You don't have to wonder where you stand with him because he makes it clear through how he shows up, not just what he says. Consistency removes anxiety. It builds trust. It creates emotional safety. But when you prioritize potential over patterns, you stay stuck in a cycle of hope. You keep waiting for things to become what they could be instead of accepting what they actually are. You hold on to the good moments and ignore the empty spaces in between. You focus on what he says he will do instead of what he has consistently done. And over time, that takes a toll on you because you're constantly adjusting your expectations based on his inconsistency. One day you feel secure. The next day you feel unsure. One moment you feel valued. The next moment you feel neglected. And that emotional roller coaster becomes exhausting. The truth is, consistency is not something that needs to be forced or taught. It's a reflection of interest, intention, and readiness. When a man truly values you and is ready for something real, his consistency will show it. His consistency will show it. He won't disappear and reappear. He won't leave you guessing. He won't rely on charm and words to maintain your attention. And here's where many women lose themselves. They start chasing those high moments, those emotional peaks, because they feel so good compared to the lows. They start accepting inconsistency because they become attached to the feeling of when things are good. But a relationship should not be defined by occasional highs. It should be defined by steady, reliable presence. You have to train yourself to look beyond what feels good in the moment and start observing what is consistent over time. How often does he show up for you without being asked? How reliable is his communication? How aligned are his actions with his words? How stable is his presence in your life? Because at the end of the day, it's not the promises that build a relationship. It's the patterns. It's not the intense moments that create security. It's the consistent ones. It's not the potential that determines your future. It's the reality of who he is right now. And when you start valuing consistency over everything else, your perspective changes. You stop being easily impressed by words. You stop getting attached to temporary moments. You stop investing in potential that hasn't been proven. And you start recognizing the difference between someone who is genuinely ready to build with you and someone who is just passing through your life, giving you glimpses of what could have been you abandoned. Your standards out of fear of losing in him, not realizing that's exactly what makes a good man lose respect and walk away. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly in small decisions that feel harmless in the moment. You let something slide here. You stay quiet there. You accept something you normally wouldn't, all because you don't want to create tension. You don't want to seem difficult. You don't want to risk him pulling away. At first, it feels like you just being understanding. You tell yourself you're being flexible, patient, easy, going. You don't want to come off as too demanding or too strict, especially if you really like him. So when something bothers you, you downplay it. When he crosses a line, you convince yourself it's not that serious. When he doesn't meet your expectations, you lower them just enough to make the situation feel acceptable. But every time you do that, you send a message, not just to him, but to yourself. You're telling him what you're willing to tolerate, and you're telling yourself that your standards are negotiable. And once those standards start moving, it becomes easier and easier for them to keep shifting until you barely recognize what you once required in a relationship. A man pays attention to what you accept more than what you say. You can talk about your standards all day, but if your actions don't match, he's going to follow your behavior, not your words. If you say you value respect but tolerate disrespect, if you say you want consistency but accept inconsistency, if you say you need effort but reward the bare minimum, you create a gap between what you want and what you allow. And that gap is where respect starts to fade, because respect is built on boundaries that are maintained, not just expressed. It's built on knowing that certain lines cannot be crossed without consequences, not punishment, not drama, just a clear understanding that you will not stay in a situation that doesn't align with your values. When you abandon your standards, you remove that structure. You make everything flexible, negotiable, adjustable, based on how much you like him or how afraid you are of losing him. And that fear becomes the driving force behind your decisions. You start prioritizing his comfort over your peace, his approval over your self-respect, his presence over your emotional well-being. The irony is, the more you do this, the less secure the relationship becomes, because now you're constantly trying to hold on to something that doesn't feel stable. You're overthinking your words, overanalyzing his behavior, trying to keep everything smooth so he doesn't pull away. And that creates anxiety, because deep down, you know you're not being true to yourself. A good man, A man who is emotionally mature and genuinely looking for something real doesn't want a woman who abandons her standards for him. He may not say it directly, but he feels it. He notices when you don't speak up. He notices when you tolerate things you shouldn't. And instead of feeling more connected, he starts to feel less challenged, less inspired, less engaged. Because a man who is serious about building something meaningful respects a woman who respects herself. He values a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to stand on it. He trusts a woman who has boundaries because those boundaries create clarity, stability, and mutual respect. But when you remove those boundaries, the dynamic changes. Now there's no structure, no accountability, no clear standard to meet. And without that, the relationship can start to feel unbalanced, even if everything seems calm on the surface. At the same time, there are men who will take advantage of that flexibility, not necessarily out of malice, but because human nature follows the path of least resistance. If you make it easy for someone to give less and still keep you, many will do exactly that. And then you find yourself getting more and more hoping it will bring things back into balance, when in reality, it only reinforces the imbalance. You start feeling resentful, not just toward him, but toward yourself. You think about all the things you accepted, all the times you stayed quiet, all the moments you ignored your instincts, and that resentment builds because you know you went against your own standards just to keep someone who wasn't fully meeting you where you stood. The truth is, the right man doesn't require you to shrink yourself to keep him. He doesn't need you to lower your standards to feel comfortable. He rises to meet them, not perfectly, not instantly, but willingly. There's effort, there's intention, there's a desire to align with what you value because he sees the worth in it. But when you operate from fear, you don't give yourself the chance to experience that kind of dynamic because you're too busy trying to maintain something instead of evaluating whether it's even right for you. You're focused on not losing him instead of making sure you're not losing yourself. Standards are not about being rigid or unrealistic. They're about knowing what you need to feel respected, valued, and secure in a relationship. They're about having a clear sense of what is acceptable and what is not, and being willing to walk away when those lines are crossed. And that willingness is what creates real power. Not control over someone else, but control over your own choices. It's what shifts you from a position of fear to a position of self-respect. It's what allows you to choose a relationship that aligns with you instead of settling for one that slowly pulls you away from who you are. Because the moment you stop abandoning your standards is the moment you stop attracting situations that require you to compromise them in the first place.